Hello, everyone. Welcome to our space. We're dealing with some technical issues, this being our first event set up this way. I see that SteakHut is there. Is that Ribeye or Wagyu?
GM, this is Ribeye. We should have Wagyu joining us shortly as well.
Hey, if you could, maybe we could take a minute. I don't know if you could retweet the link because everyone who signed up for the first space that was deleted, so they're not going to get a notification that this space is happening. So it would be nice to give them a chance to join us, even if that costs a few minutes. So I don't know if we could take a little break, as we say, and just get that tweet out. That would be great. What do you think, Ribeye?
Yeah, we just put out a announcement with a new one, and just took it live to the Discord as well. So we've got a
Amazing.
couple of our community joining us. Just got Wagyu down there as well, ready to jump up.
Awesome. And Jared, is everything going well, technically speaking? Silence is not a good sign. Hey, Wagyu, we'll probably bring you up as soon as possible. Jared is sort of manning the technical side of things, and as we are broadcasting this to YouTube and to Twitter broadcast, as well as doing the space at the same time, it's quite a few things going on. So, yeah, everyone in the audience, just please give us a few minutes, and we'll try to get going.
It's good to see some of our community down the bottom there. GM guys, I see Solo rocking the very nice Louis Vuitton steak JPEG there. It's good to sort of do a different time for you guys. Usually we're at a bit of an awkward time zone for a few guys, so cool to see a few of you joining us live.
Yeah, it's sort of amazing. Like with, I think like Twitter Spaces is sort of great actually, but has been mired in like technical difficulties, and I think users are like completely fine with it at this point. They're like able to turn around on a dime and find the space somehow, even when it disappears or starts in a different link and so on. So yeah, happy to see that people are joining.
Yeah, we got you.
The microphone sounds okay. All right, let's get going. Welcome, guys.
GM, thanks for having us, guys.
Yeah, happy to continue this conversation that we started on Tuesday. So I think I'd like to begin with if you could tell us like on Tuesday we discussed the product quite extensively, and today we'd like to talk about more of the project and then sort of your views on crypto and the blockchain space in general. So my first question, could you tell us like what was your main driving factor in launching the SteakHut project?
Yeah, cool. Great question. And we sort of mentioned this on our last chat briefly as well. So to dive into it, we actually we've gone past our first birthday now. So we're over 1 year old. And we began, a year ago, building on top of Trader Joe, VJO. So that's a year ago now on Avalanche. And sort of been a fun ride, obviously, and a lot of exciting things and a lot of things that were built out in the meantime. And so where we sort of went is, and how this sort of evolved is, we first saw that Trader Joe was bringing in their B tokenomics. So we saw the opportunity to sort of build this curve, convex-like relationship as the Joe was. And so that's how SteakHut began. And then we launched, partnering with Trader Joe for their Rocket Joe Launchpad, and that's how we took Stake live to Avalanche. And then since then, we've sort of had this mission of trying to sort of innovate this space and making DeFi low cost, accessible, and really create this strong community for SteakHut. So since then, we've released a few products. We released our auto compounding vaults, which are just these really low cost auto compounders that let users sort of deposit their tokens into protocols like Aave, and then we just auto compound their tokens to grow their deposits and offer a very cheap way of doing things. And then since then, we have brought out our now flagship platform, SteakHut Liquidity, which is an active liquidity management platform, like you said, built on top of Trader Joe's liquidity book, Trader Joe V2. And quick summary for what we do there is we basically optimize and automate concentrated liquidity. So anyone that's had the chance to play around and is now familiar with concentrated liquidity, instead of being this sort of set and forget style approach like basically Uniswap V2 was, users now come along and they basically select what bin or what price points to provide liquidity to, and that will allow them to earn fees. So while their bins or price range is active and providing swaps, they'll be earning fees. And then as the price moves, the user then either, moves their liquidity to the new price or waits for the price to come back down to start earning fees again. So where SteakHut liquidity comes in is we're basically automate and optimize that process for users. So users can deposit into SteakHut directly, and then we provide liquidity on trade Joe V2. And basically our smart contracts ensure that liquidity is sort of always working and always doing its thing. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, definitely SteakHut liquidity is quickly becoming our flagship platform. Especially recently, we saw, I think it was last month, Uniswap V3 is now, open for everyone to start forking. So we're seeing a lot of concentrated liquidity dexes starting to pop up all over the place. And with that, we've seen this big realization from people that are now starting to realize the big opportunity for active liquidity management. So we've seen quite an explosion in that side of things, especially with everyone's sort of starting to build and create concentrated liquidity now. In terms of chain, so yeah, like you said, we're live on Avalanche and we're live on Arbitrum One. We're Avalanche native, so we started on Avalanche, and that's where the majority of our community is. So that's probably where we see the large majority of our community and sort of activity going on. But we've also been focused on trying to grow our presence on top of Arbitrum One as well. So we're seeing things pick up there, and hopefully we can see that continue to keep growing as well. Yeah, thank you. So, very exciting for that one. So that's for SteakHut liquidity. It's now grown over 1 mil. So for context, we recently partnered with Delta Prime last week, who's a lending and borrowing platform specializing in under collateralized loans. So sort of the holy grail to on-chain lending and borrowing markets. And so they're doing a really great job of basically helping users sort of unlock the most of their liquidity. Similar sort of context and sort of similar vision to what we're trying to create there. So basically, a lot of these sort of old school lending and borrowing, you'd sort of come in, deposit tokens, and then you'd sort of be able to borrow 1-for-1. With these guys, you can borrow at up to, I think it's 5 times leverage. So they're helping unlock a lot of liquidity on chain and doing some cool things there. And part of that is what's sort of helped us push over and start reaching some new heights with SteakHut liquidity.
So we have a lot of forward-looking questions coming, but just one or two more sort of backwards-looking questions. I'm just curious, so far in your journey, what has been the biggest challenges that you faced, whether technical or emotional or fundraising or what else?
I think time zones. So we're Australian, so our time zone is basically the opposite to everyone else. So there's been a lot of late nights, early mornings, and sort of strange times. But I think probably one of the main challenges that I'd say, and something that always sort of pops up for us, is sort of knowing what to focus on and how to sort of triage what comes next for SteakHut. We have so many ideas and so many things that we want to build and bring in that it can be hard to sort of narrow down and just tunnel vision on the one project. I think we can, sort of all agree that DeFi teams are always so busy and there's always so much work that needs to be done at times. So what we do and what our sort of solution is to this is we triage our problems, and there's 3 things that we sort of look at here. So we focus on innovation, community, and security. So when trying to figure out what to concentrate on next, we sort of ask ourselves, is this something that innovates and moves the space forward? is this something that's sort of community focused? And of course, in DeFi, security is essential. So obviously, ensuring that we're creating safe to use products as well. And that's sort of how we sort of narrow down and come up with what we want to build next and which project to focus on.
Yeah, I think I can relate to that. With more money, we have like 8 ideas that we're working on, and which one do you want to work on at this time? And is now the right time? Or are we going to miss that window? Are we going to miss that window anyways if we push this product right now? So these are always sort of tough questions. Yeah. So moving on, you've currently you're on Avalanche and you're on Arbitrum. Can you tell us your experience going from Avalanche to Arbitrum and how you see that moving forward?
Yeah, I might get started there quickly, and then Wagyu can sort of jump in as well. So for context, I take care of a lot of the community and sort of marketing side of things, and then Wagyu is our lead developer, so maybe he can come in from a different perspective as well. But for me, sort of the thing is, and the challenge is we started off as this Avalanche-focused, Avalanche native platform, and then sort of moving and building on top of a new chain. The obvious challenge is you're sort of starting from zero again in many ways and trying to build up that community again. So that's sort of the big challenge there. And so what we've tried to do there and what our sort of focus has been is trying to partner with a whole bunch of really great projects and builders across Web3 and that are Arbitrum focused. And that's sort of how we've gone to market and tried to sort of break into this new chain where we're not known and no one sort of knows what we're doing. And so what we've done there is we've partnered with a ton of great projects, just like we did with More Money, creating liquidity vaults to help manage their liquidity, and then as well as a couple of builders on the space. We've got Fungi Alpha is one of our great friends, and they're an alpha group, and we've done spaces with them, and they're really well known on Arbitrum, and really fun spaces and guys to talk to, and they've sort of helped us get the word out as well. So that's sort of about being our focus from a community perspective, was just trying to build as many strong relationships as we can and getting to meet as many people from that community to help sort of build our path there. So excited to sort of continue building that out, and that's something we want to keep building that relationship and keep building our community on Arbitrum.
Wagyu, did you want to chime in on the technical side? Super curious, like what the technical challenges of moving to a new chain. Are you just, how complicated is it to just fork the code and get it going, or are there like other technicalities that are hard to overcome, or is it easier than we think?
Yeah, hey everyone, jumping in now. Hey, yeah, so what I've sort of found is like it's pretty easy to jump like EVM chain, like pretty easy just to sort of deploy the smart contract code across. Takes a little bit of time, but it's not actually super challenging to do that, especially like going from like Avalanche to Arbitrum. Like we could go to any of the other EVM chains like relatively easy. Like you probably do that in a weekend on the smart contract phase. From the more frustrating point is just like from the front end point of view. So it's just like that sort of seems to have taken, like when we shifted from Avalanche to Arbitrum and expanded, it was pretty much smart contracts were ready to go, and you're like sitting around going, oh, I've got to get the DApp up to scratch now, and just getting all that tooling front facing sort of took probably a week to get going. Just porting it onto the other chain, but we should have that down pat now. And like if we need to expand in the future, it should be pretty easy to actually port to other chains. Or we're actually pretty happy with right now just being on Avalanche and Arbitrum. That's sort of where I see a lot of the users at the moment. Would be cool to go to ETH one day, but we'll see what happens there. But yeah, pretty relatively straightforward from smart contract just to move between chains.
Yeah, and I guess liquidity book is identical on both chains. So the smart contracts for each specific vault is going to be exactly the same, correct?
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, pretty much.
Nice.
Trader Joe deploys the same thing on every chain, and then we're deploying the same thing on every chain.
Cool. Wondering, do you guys have a view in terms of Avalanche and Arbitrum? What are the strengths and weaknesses of each chain, either from a technical or community or otherwise perspective?
I mean, we really like Avalanche. That's sort of always been our home on Avalanche. It's where we got started. It's pretty funny how like over the we've been in the space for a while now, and like even before SteakHut we're in the space. So it's like it's pretty interesting to see like where like just community, where people like the chains that people are interested in. Like it's sort of like a bit of the Arbitrum having recently had the airdrop, and a heap of hype around the Arbitrum space, like super interesting to be there at that time. So it's like it's interesting to see like the shift in communities sort of thing, and like the different communities in the space, because like you would assume that they're like pretty similar, but it's like the some of the people in the Avalanche and Arbitrum space, like they're actually like sort of pretty different as well at the same time. So it's like you really gotta like, that's what we're really just focusing on, is trying to grow on the Arbitrum space, really grow that community up. And then, I mean, it's pretty cool. Like Avalanche got all their like subnet features. It seems like Arbitrum or also sort of touting like a sort of an L3 sort of thing, like blockchain, like an internet of blockchain sort of thing. So it sort of seems like Avalanche is like, I mean, probably the most progressed there. They've got like a heap of tooling that's out with their subnets, and seems to be shifting pretty well there for them. But it's just cool. Like you just sort of see a heap of change, just sort of trying to compete and push everyone, push the whole space forward, I suppose. So, which is good for everyone.
Well, when you said the two communities are a little bit different, can you expand on that? Like, what does that mean specifically?
It just sort of like what we sort of find is like the same sort of marketing approach, whilst might work on Avalanche quite well, it sort of doesn't get so much traction on Arbitrum sometimes, and then like you can sort of like go to another tweet and you'll sort of have a reverse, like different start. You'll have you can see, oh hey, this is like the Arbitrum community's like interacting with this tweet, or like a lot more sort of thing. So it's just like interesting just to sort of see the different approaches between the chains, I suppose. I mean, that's just sort of what we sort of see. But yeah, it could be. I mean, it might just be because hey, we're like we're just trying to grow the community on Arbitrum, whereas we're like quite established on Avalanche, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting because I didn't expect you to say that, which is why I was curious to get more details on it. How far do you guys think you are from? Are you looking at a third chain or not at all? I know we touched on it on Tuesday, but I don't know if you can expand on like where you are in that process of looking at other chains, and what would it take for you to sort of move forward on those decisions?
I think if we're going to go to a third chain, the focus would probably be either Ethereum or might like be interested in like Coinbase's base net. But I'm not sure how well liquidity book would actually function on top of Ethereum. So it's like we probably have to explore other avenues for our automated liquidity management model if we were to do that. But then I'm not sure, not really sure on the base testnet sort of thing. That would be pretty cool to jump on the Coinbase's one, but those are probably my two big interests at the moment, and we'll sort of see where that takes us.
Can you discuss a little bit the interest in base? Why?
I just think, Coinbase is building. I know that it sort of gets away a little bit from like the traditional DeFi grounds, but like Coinbase are building like a heap of really cool like onboarding, offboarding ramps. So it's like they're coming out with like wallet as a service, like they've built out, like a lot of users are actually onboarded through Coinbase. So it's like, hey, well, you're onboarded by Coinbase. You're probably going to use, like, this is just what I'm thinking, my opinions only. It's like, hey, you're onboarded through Coinbase. You're probably going to be introduced to the Coinbase OP stack pretty early on because, hey, you've been onboarded by Coinbase. They're going to push for that. So it's like they'll end up driving, I imagine, users to their base net. So it's like, it's just that sort of onboarding flow is what sort of interests me the most, and just sort of having like the power and push of one of the most reputable crypto companies on the world sort of pushing the chain as well. So like I think that could be pretty powerful.
So I think Jared's going to be jumping into AMM questions in a second. But before we get to that, I was just curious if you guys had any views on, since we were discussing other chains, on L2s versus ZKs versus sharding. You sort of have like a sense of where the space is going. And you may or may not have something to say on this, but I thought it'd be an interesting question to ask.
It sort of feels at the moment, and like in recent times, it sort of seems that there's like a new chain or a new way to do things like pop up. Like you sort of see a new thing like every month. Is sort of what I feel. Most of them are using like ZK or whatever else it is. It's like I don't sort of try and scout each new chain and like do a heap of research on each new chain. It's like when it sort of gets, once it gets traction, I'll sort of start having a little bit of looking at it. It's like, I only sort of just last couple of months like sort of really looked into like optimism, stuff like that, and that was mainly just because pretty much just because I heard Coinbase is like building on top of the optimism stacks. Was like, oh cool, have a bit of a look on that. But it's not like I don't sort of sit there and go like research a heap of different like methods and stuff like that. It's like at the end of the day, I feel like the best one will end up coming out on top, and that'll be probably a combination of like scalability and security, but ultimately what's going to be there is like it'll be the user base. It's like the majority of users will want to use what's best for them, and you'll sort of just start seeing like pretty much just communities talking about the chain that they're on, and it's pretty much why we decided to be on Avalanche like a year ago. It's like it was like a heap hype, community was awesome, still is awesome, and it's just like everyone was like touting how cool Avalanche's tech was. So it was like one of our main reasons to jump onto Avalanche. So it's like I think what you'll see is if there's a new blockchain that's really good and it's coming to light, we'll really start to see people talk about it, and it'll sort of just be brought to light from people who know about blockchains a lot better than myself does. So we'll just sort of rely on going where sort of going where the crowd is, I suppose, on that regard.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry. I might quickly get started, then Waggy, you can jump in too if you got some thoughts. So we've been building on top of Trade Joe for the best part of the year. That's where we started building it, and that's sort of where we've continued to build. So heading back sort of a year ago, Trader Joe was just starting to bring out their revised tokenomics, and a big part of that was VJoe and their V tokenomics. And with that, we saw this opportunity, and the whole V tokenomic thing was just sort of coming into popularity and just being introduced onto Avalanche at the time. So we saw this great opportunity to build out this Trader Joe VJoe boosting product, and that's really sort of how we came about and got to know the Trader Joe team, and we've always sort of been Trader Joe bulls as well. So it was a pretty exciting opportunity for us to start building it and sort of start creating on top of Trader Joe. And then, of course, we launched the stake token through their launch pad as well. And then fast forward maybe 5-6 months after that, sort of into the process, they started leaking information about Trader Joe V2, the liquidity book. And so this was something that we were excited about as well. We thought straight away that this would probably look, similar to Uniswap V3 and bringing in this concentrated liquidity model. So we started doing a whole bunch of research on top of Uniswap V3 and sort of wrapping our head around this whole new concept of concentrated liquidity. And then we worked closely with our community team, brainstorming, having a chat to these guys, trying to figure out what exactly we could create on top of this concentrated liquidity DEX, which is where SteakHut liquidity came in. And I remember at the time, Wagyu was like searching for signs of Trader Joe's code, kept sort of refreshing all the time, and eventually ended up finding some of their code base very early on before release. So that gave us a great opportunity to actually start building it and creating well before Liquidity Book was even introduced. So we're basically ready to launch at the same time that Trader Joe V2 went live, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, for Liquidity Book, I mean, one of the big selling points there is like you've got zero slippage between in the same bin. So like if you've got if you're at the $1 bin, for instance, let's use Money USDC as a great example. Pretty much as long as there's liquidity in the $1 bin, you'll get zero slippage on your trade in that bin. So it's a pretty cool thing to have. I mean, even Uniswap or, like pretty much any other AMM, you'll get a small amount of slippage. Even if you tried to complete a sizable trade at $1 sort of thing, just because of how the models sort of work. It's I mean, there's positives and drawbacks to each sort of model as well, but that's one of the main differences. And then sort of the second difference between, say, a Uni V3 and liquidity book would be just the difference in they're sort of like interchangeable, like ticks or bins. Uniswap uses ticks to determine pricing, whereas Trader Joe uses bins. Very similar, but essentially, when you deploy with Trader Joe, all your liquidity gets deposited amongst bins. Whereas on Uniswap, you get an NFT non-fungible receipt for your position. I mean, I personally don't really have much of a preference in regards there, but just a key difference there. But yeah, I think both models are like really good, really good. Definitely an improvement over the Uniswap V2 model. And like, there's some pretty interesting projects in the space as well. I think there's up and coming. There's like on Avalanche, at least, there's a project called Caval. I think it's called Caval.re or Cavalry. Looks pretty promising. It's like multi swaps. I haven't actually delved too much into like the detail on exactly what's going on under the hood, but like essentially you can like swap one token for I think up to 250 tokens in the same transaction, which is really cool. But yeah, there's a heap and I think there's actually like a heap of other I think there's another project that's pretty cool. I forget the name of it, but like there's a heap of innovation in the space, and like I'm pretty keen to see where the space ends up. I know that the Uniswap team's probably working on V4 and stuff like that as we speak, hopefully. And like it's just cool to see innovation in the space and everyone sort of pushing each other forward.
Yeah, I could jump in there real quick, Wagon. You can come in as well. Yeah, you're exactly right there. That's really great summary. And that's sort of the big upside to concentrated liquidity. Sort of in one word, concentrated liquidity improves efficiency across dexes. So to quickly jump in that, and I mentioned earlier, on Uniswap V2 models, you'd provide liquidity passively from a price range of 0 to infinity, which is a really inefficient way of doing things. Especially for like stables and things like that as well. You'd end up with a ton of slippage every time you'd swap tokens. But then concentrated liquidity comes in, which allows you to concentrate your liquidity. You can select what price range you want to supply liquidity to and facilitate the swapping over. So going back to that Money USDC example, it makes sense to supply liquidity quite tightly around the $1 price range where you're going to see all that price action. And then, like you said, that makes concentrated liquidity dexes and Trader Joe extremely competitive against stable swaps. If not actually more competitive than stable swaps and with higher efficiency. Bagger, do you want to jump in there as well?
No, you've nailed it. Nothing else for me to add. think, yeah, I mean, I sort of tend to agree. I mean, Trader Joe's been probably the dominant DEX on Avalanche for, like, at least in my opinion, for, I mean, probably the better part of like a year and a half sort of thing. I mean, I don't, yeah, I mean, if you're on Avalanche, you're pretty much swapping with Trader Joe. It's really super user-friendly, user interface, and then like the tech is really good as well. So, I mean, I can't see, like, I mean, I don't think there's anyone at the moment who can compete with Trader Joe on Avalanche. That's currently in the space. I mean, that's not to say that there's not new entrants that may come to the space, but yeah, I think definitely Joe's got like a foothold on Avalanche for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say Dexlot's a very interesting one as well. I'm not that familiar with them, but basically the first centralized limit order book Dex on Avalanche and run their own subnet basically. I don't know too much about them, but what they're building out is quite interesting from what I've seen so far. So they're definitely doing some really cool things for the space as well.
Yeah, I would just say, I think in terms of the community, I don't know that it's super important for a DEX, especially as we're stepping into like this age of aggregators. So I think for JoePags and other products that Trader Joe is working on, I think the community is great, but I'm not sure it really makes a difference for trades. I know it has in the past, but in the future, I think everything's going to go through aggregators. So I think efficiency is going to sort of drive volumes.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there as well. I think, with a ton of volume sort of coming from these aggregators, a big part of it now is sort of being able to build the best decks, being able to build the most efficient way of swapping tokens to make sure that you start winning those trades and capturing that volume. I think that's really a big driving force and to capture all those trades. Yeah, it's kind of that's a pretty good question. Sort of for a broad sort of and answer that. I think you nailed it with the efficiency. We had a small thread on this a little while ago where we explore, that liquidity is always sort of looking for the most efficient way of doing things. And that's what concentrated liquidity is, and that's why our sort of focus has been here. It's this much more capital efficient way of doing things. Whereas before, protocols were spending huge amounts of money paying bribes, paying farms, paying emissions, basically renting their liquidity from mercenary capital. And then concentrated liquidity comes in, and with active liquidity management from SteakHut, now we unlock a ton of value and allow these protocols to do things in a lot more efficient way and to actually own their liquidity instead of renting it through protocol-owned liquidity and through their liquidity providers as well, rather than paying out a ton of emissions. So I think as a broad sort of answer, I think things are always moving towards being more and more capital efficient. I think we've still got a long way to go in that regard. And I think obviously the DeFi markets are still very early stages compared to the sort of mature Web 2 markets that we see. And I think that's sort of where we're slowly going is working towards bringing as much capital efficiency on chain as possible. Have I got anything to sort of add on there as well?
No, nothing else from me. That was good.
Yeah, to jump in there and for the listeners as well. So in the context of mercenary capital is basically these big whales sort of coming in, depositing their liquidity wherever the yield's sort of highest, taking advantage of that, and then the second that yield sort of dries up, they move on to the next one, constantly sort of draining yield and draining rewards away from other users. That's basically the context and what we sort of mean by mercenary capital. And I think in the regard of sort of this yield farming approach to mercenary capital, I think concentrated liquidity definitely does do a good job of solving that problem. I'm trying to think if it fully solves it, I'm not sure, but definitely basically solves sort of the issue there. Whereas, like I was saying before, the big sort of problem would come with sort of this liquidity mining and protocols paying out a ton of emissions to their liquidity providers. Because, of course, in the old model, like we were saying before, a very inefficient way of doing things where these protocols would supply liquidity on Uniswap V2, Uniswap V2 forks that do so from 0 to infinity price range. And that requires a ton of liquidity. It really, a ton of liquidity to ensure there's, deep liquidity, ensure there's, reduced slippage when swapping these tokens. But with concentrated liquidity, like we said, much more capital efficient approach to doing things. Going back to Trade Joe's white paper, I think their quote is 20,000 times more capital efficient way of doing things by being able to concentrate your liquidity. And what this means is now these protocols can, own their liquidity more, so to speak. So whereas they'd have protocol-owned liquidity before, you'd need so much protocol-owned liquidity to ensure deep liquidity, ensure reduced slippage for between trading tokens. But now much less capital is actually required to achieve, this deep liquidity. And with that as well, there's no longer this huge need to bring in external liquidity providers, and having a ton of protocol and liquidity can help, create deep liquidity without that need to spend a ton of money bringing in that mercenary capital. So I think in that regard, it definitely, solves it to the majority of the extent. Yeah.
If I can jump in, speaking from like the more money point of view, I think not having to do a ton of emissions to have liquidity on your tokens is the dream, right? Like this is what we all want. No one wants to have to devalue their own token to be able to have users be able to trade it. And I do think, I don't know if we're there yet. And that was sort of our idea, like testing, moving, because we recently moved from Platypus to, we still have a pool on Platypus, but we opened in new pools on Trader Joe. And that was part of the idea, was to, test this. Can we go to a place where we don't have to do emissions, because the bins make it so efficient that the trading fees alone are enough to attract the proper liquidity required that you need to run to have users trade your token. So I don't know if we're there yet, but it definitely seems like we're heading there quickly, where protocols are going to be able to launch and not necessarily have to spend a ton of capital or devalue a ton of their market cap in emissions.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. Not sure if we're there yet, but we're definitely close. It feels like, and definitely making very good progress towards that, and towards that goal of bringing in as much efficiency as possible.
Yeah, thanks for this discussion. It was a really nice follow-up from the other discussion that we had on Tuesday. I think it closes things up nicely. Happy to hear all your sort of thoughts on the ecosystem and so on. So really appreciate this.
Thanks for having us.
Guys. It's a good chat.
All right, ciao, ciao.